At the Council of Valhalla, the gods held their most crucial meeting to decide humanity's fate, with Zeus, leader of the gods and assembly president, calling for a vote where Aphrodite, Shiva, and others argued that despite humans' potential to improve and abandon war, their wickedness threatened all creation, leading the council to unanimously condemn them to extinction. Just as Zeus was about to order humanity's destruction, two Valkyries stormed in and opposed it, angering several gods who insisted the Valkyries, mere demigoddesses, had no place in the assembly of the gods at Brunhilde. But the Valkyries' leader cited Ragnarok, a law in Valhalla's constitution granting humans the right to challenge the gods in a 13-round death match to avert annihilation, which the gods mocked as absurd, until Brunhilde exploited their arrogance to goad them into agreeing. Zeus permits Ragnarok, leaving humanity's fate to 13 representatives picked by Brunhilde on Battle Day, as gods and humans assemble in Valhalla's arena to observe the first round that will determine mankind's future. Heimdall, the apocalypse's guardian, then declares Ragnarok's start and presents each side's fighters, who must battle to the death, with the gods' first combatant being Thor, whose unfamiliar design surprises Western expectations, while Gaul, the youngest Valkyrie. Yet humans feel no fear, blindly trusting in the courage and might of Lu Bu, their first chosen champion, while his officers and troops greet him eagerly. Lu Bu, the warlord who once ruled 3 first-century Asian empires, leaps onto the field, igniting his soldiers' spirits just as battle looms. And Brunhilde whispers to G that she longs to see the gods' smug expressions twist. Both opponents treat the fight casually at first, stunning the audience, until Lu Bu lands the opening hit, sending Thor stumbling, then unleashes a dazzling attack that leaves spectators in awe at how fierce and balanced the clash becomes, forcing Thor to abandon his taunts, wield Mjolnir for the first time in ages out of respect, a weapon he hadn't used since a distant. As a voiceover explains that Asgard was ruined by a sudden assault from 66 clever giants thousands of years ago, Thor wields his hammer. Since the gods had grown overconfident, expecting only lone attacks, the city's defenses couldn't handle such a massive strike, leaving Asgard. Thor suddenly stood before them fearlessly and destroyed them with one strike, leaving the few survivors stunned. So much so that the gods recounted his devastation for centuries, yet, when they saw his next attack, they were shocked to find it even more terrifying than memory served. When Thor's brutal assault reduces the battlefield to ruins, the gods assume the fight is done, until Spear rises from the dust, revealing Thor badly wounded in the chest. With deep admiration, Thor praises him for the astonishing assault, and as their eyes meet in mutual understanding, a flashback unfolds, telling the tale of Lu Bu, who was raised in what is now Mongolia and roamed across Eurasia seeking worthy rivals. A quest that defined his entire life, earning him fame throughout China, while his followers swelled unnervingly into a vast army, allowing him to rule 3 kingdoms. Truth is, he simply surrendered after losing his will to live, for no one on earth could endure even a single strike from him. Returning to the present, the fierce, evenly matched duel thrills both fighters, drawing Zeus's gaze, who notices Brunhilde. A flashback shows Brunhilde telling Gaul that humans cannot defeat a god because no human weapon can endure a clash with divine arms, so she gathers the last 11 Valkyries, uniting all 13 sisters for the first time, and asks Rangris, the 4th Valkyrie, to sacrifice. Thor's overwhelming weapons are accepted without question, while the Yu casually reveals that Lu Bu's spear is actually Rangris, an incredibly powerful weapon known to the Valkyrie called Shieldbreaker. Then, a voiceover explains that Thor's hammer is the most powerful weapon in existence, even among gods, but no one can wield it because its immense power would instantly kill any user, forcing Thor to rely on the most powerful iron gloves ever made. Yet, Lu Bu shocks the entire stadium by shattering one of those gloves with his spear and unleashing a brutal volley of attacks. As Thor's hammer starts pounding audibly and its metal shell melts like lava, the strikes grow louder and louder, making the crowd fear it might explode. But Zeus clarifies that the iron gloves weren't meant to help Thor grip the hammer, but to prevent his strength from crushing it before it awakens, since the hammer is alive. Thor, now holding it with excitement, eagerly faces his powerful opponent and hurls the hammer like a boomerang. But Lu Bu dodges and even blocks a direct strike, stunning both Thor and the spectators, until seconds later, Lu Bu's bones snap and his ankles shatter. After losing a fight before the gods and mocking their strength, the boasters fall silent when they see Lu's red-haired horse charge onto the battlefield, spurring his master on as the crowd erupts in cheers. Then, against all odds, Lu forces himself back up. Though his ankles are shattered, he drags himself onto the horse's back, moments later sending expectations soaring. Though some gods protest that the one-on-one rule forbids it, Zeus dismisses them, declaring the horse part of Lu's body, ready to sacrifice everything in one final crushing strike. Lu and his horse exchange a knowing glance, agreeing to give their lives to destroy Thor, then begin to turn, just as Thor, once Lu's disciple, flashes back to the endless days and nights his general spent perfecting an attack so powerful it once split the sky, a feat he never repeated until now. Lu Bu, impaled by his own spear, lunges at Thor as Thor readies his final and strongest strike, yet the humans prevail. For Lu Bu is utterly crushed in defeat, dying in the grandest fashion after finally meeting a worthy rival, while his generals and troops grieve deeply and revere his memory with the highest honor before Thor, filled with sorrow, turns away from Lu Bu's body and departs, leaving behind only Hel him to let them depart with their general as a gesture of respect. So Thor will strike with full force and thank them for permitting you to send an offering to Lu, your friend. While Gaul asks Brunhilde about the fate of Lu Bu and Rangris, she replies that it's clear their souls are lost in space forever, erased from every plane and dimension. Gone, Gaul laments in despair, asking if this battle is truly worth fighting when no trace of their fallen comrades remains. But Brunhilde joyfully insists that all of humanity hinges on its outcome. After announcing Lu Bu's defeat and readying the 000, the gods acknowledges him as a true rival as Heimdall begins to eagerly present the god's champion. An urgent message forces him to alter his announcement, and a haunting violin melody fills the air. The entire stadium falls into stunned silence as uncertainty gives way to scandal and fear, until Hermes, the god's messenger, begins playing a violin solo, sending the divine audience into cheers 1,000 times louder than those they gave. Thor, then a frail old man, appears, disappointing the humans, but failing to quiet the gods' singing before the man suddenly bulks up like an anime character, while Heimdall delivers an epic introduction, revealing himself as Zeus, the supreme god and cosmic ruler, leaving Gaul and Brunhilde in despair as their plan crumbles, while a flashback shows Shiva preparing to enter the battlefield, only for Zeus to block him and insist on fighting second, despite Shiva's repeated refusals. Shiva flies into a rage and challenges the old man, only for the old man to drop him to his knees by simply resting an arm on him. When Shiva then tries to intimidate Zeus but sees him not even flinch, he gives up his turn, and Zeus, hearing the stadium erupt in frenzy, enters the battlefield in ecstasy, urging Adam to also fuse with the Valkyrie, just as Adam points upward and declares. As Adam's Valkyrie, the glasses-wearing Regan, soars over the stadium on a Pegasus before leaping down and fusing with him, turning into a knuckle-wielding fighter, Heimdall kicks off the battle, and Zeus sarcastically praises Adam for bringing just knuckle dusters to the biggest fight of his life, only for Adam to coolly retort that Zeus should worry about finding his own weapon first, provoking Zeus. Adam effortlessly evades Zeus's initial attack, stunning the crowd and lifting humanity's spirits, while Zeus, impressed by Adam's skill, unleashes a relentless barrage of strikes growing faster and stronger, only for Adam to dodge each one as if predicting them. Then counter by mirroring Zeus's own moves and landing every hit, leaving Gaul in disbelief. He admits to Brunhilde that he had assumed Adam would lose, but she clarifies that Adam was made in Zeus's image, making it natural for him to. Zeus strikes Adam once more with an odd, unfamiliar move, but Adam again mimics the exact method to dodge, then counters with Zeus's own technique, infuriating him so badly that Zeus leaps up, his muscles swell. With his youthful strength now fully on display, he readies a crushing strike, sparking wild excitement, just as a flashback reveals how Zeus overthrew every Titanomachy god to claim supreme power, suffering his soul wound from his father Cronus, whose very attack Zeus now prepares to unleash on Adam by freezing time mid-lunge. Adam dodged Zeus's lightning-fast finishing blow, then spun and crushed Zeus's head with a single punch, leaving the god collapsed on the ground and stunning every spectator, while Ares, the god of war, admitted he had matched his father's combat pace the entire time, but lost track of that final instant when Zeus suddenly fell. Hermes then theorized what happened, prompting Ares to concede that even with 1,000,000 years of training, he couldn't defeat Adam, just as Heimdall declared Zeus knocked out. And Gaul confessed his shock to Brunhilde. Brunhilde reveals that Adam harbors a deep grudge against the gods, something he never expected, before a flashback shows paradise as a peaceful realm where Adam once happily ruled over creation, until the deceitful serpent, enraged after Eve rejected its advances, lied to the entire court. Since the court couldn't prove Eve's innocence, but convinced everyone she had eaten the forbidden fruit, they banished her from the garden, leaving her in tears at never seeing Adam again. Until a guard suddenly collapsed, unconscious, after opening the door. Cheers for his triumphant revenge, just as Heimdall began declaring the battle's end. Zeus emerges from the ground and stops him with a sharp turn of his head, signaling he's prepared for another round, though his worsening condition is obvious, before praising Adam for uniting all humanity in a shared emotion, then undergoing a devastating transformation that slowly reveals his true, terrifying, and overwhelmingly powerful final form as the world's energy surges through his body like a detonating bomb, making everyone tremble while his insides shudder instinctively. For the first time in the entire fight, Zeus lunges at Adam with a relentless barrage of strikes, but Adam dodges each one while using the older god as a human punching bag, countering at speeds too fast to follow. And though Zeus never stops attacking, Brunhilde despairs because she knows Adam's nervous system can't endure this brutal pace much longer, especially as he suddenly starts bleeding. For Bast, Loki notices that Zeus is also nearing his limit. Neither has landed a hit yet, but their overloaded bodies can't last much longer, and soon one of them will fall, ending the fight. The crowd roars for their champion, while spectators weep at the most thrilling, beautifully animated battle ever seen, though it seems to reach its climax as Adam, straining so hard he loses his sight, endures Zeus's rapid strikes so fast the animators struggle to render them, though they still manage only to deliberately take the hits, gauge the distance, then seize Zeus by the hair, and Zeus collapses to his knees while Adam remains standing in an unmatched pose, earning a thunderous ovation from the crowd. Yet even as Zeus tells Heimdall that Adam has died, everyone realizes mid-battle that Adam's life has faded, prompting an outpouring of tears, with Zeus admitting Adam was the true victor among men, though the rules declare survival the only path to victory. Zeus secures the win with a 2-0 score in the Ragnarok for the gods. Yet, humanity feels more inspired than before, especially after Adam proved humans can defeat gods. Enraged by past events, Brunhilde pushes through her frustration. Just as she starts eating, she learns the next god has arrived. Gaul despairs once more as he faces Poseidon, the terrifying god who rules the seas. Realizing the gods keep sending their strongest fighters into battle one after another, until Brunhilde begins reviewing the candidates, only to be interrupted by a mysterious man volunteering for the dreaded fight, whom they first failed to recognize as the aged Sasaki Kojiro, the legendary Japanese swordsman, shocking them by appearing not in his prime, but explaining that not even death could halt his training, making this his strongest form yet, which makes, as the water-filled battlefield confirms Poseidon as the next god, Heimdall proudly introduces him with the same grandeur as the others, yet Sasaki's introduction outshines it, painting him as history's greatest underdog and finest swordsman. But even Heimdall's words fail to sway the disappointed humans, who insist the elderly Sasaki doesn't represent them and argue that their true champion should be Miyamoto Musashi, the duelist who once defeated the blade's supersonic clash, stuns every swordsman, and makes Maushi tear up his book about his fight with Kojiro, realizing instantly he can't compete with someone at the peak of swordsmanship. Yet the gods show even less fear than they did before Zeus fought Adam, since Poseidon, the most ruthless and powerful Olympian, terrifies them most. Neither god moves as Kojiro mentally plays out every possible strike, only to die in each scenario, while Poseidon scoffs at the absurdity of a human. Challenging him, and Brunhilde quietly explains the situation to Gaul. Poseidon could provide context, as he did with the Valkyrie. Originally, Olympus had 13 gods, but Poseidon killed one, Adamas, the eldest son of Cronus. After a flashback revealed Adamas despised Zeus intensely for surpassing him by defeating their father, Cronus. Consumed by hatred and greed, Adamas then assembled a vast army and marched to Poseidon's palace to recruit him in overthrowing Zeus. Poseidon scornfully told Zeus that anyone too weak to build an army and scheme didn't deserve to be called a god. Enraging Adamas, who had endured enough of his younger brother's disrespect, averted gaze and condescension, until Poseidon finally met his eyes just to strike the fatal blow, then forced Hermes, the sole witness, to rewrite history under threat and silence all dissent. A command Hermes now relays to Poseidon in the present. Poseidon stands as the most terrifying god, more arrogant and bloodthirsty than any other, acting like an untouchable ruler, indifferent to the moment or situation, as Kojiro sits before him, leaving the humans stunned, before a flashback unfolds to retrace the life of Koiro, the ultimate loser, who never won a single match and was dismissed as the most respected dojo, and its master chose to discipline him with strikes, but Kojiro resisted surprisingly well, yet suddenly surrendered, prompting everyone there to ridicule and shame him for his dishonor, after which he left the dojo entirely and instead spent his time relentlessly replaying his past fights against his instructors in his mind, analyzing each as if real, while also realizing how much he could learn from nature. So he trained intensely in the wild until he felt prepared to return where he humiliated his first instructor without even fighting before challenging Sean, the dojo's owner, to a duel. Years later, when Sean visited Kojiro, he immediately saw that Kojiro's relentless self-improvement had made him far too strong, so he offered him an instructor role at a nearby dojo, study his mistakes until he ultimately surpassed them all. Now, in the present, Kojiro understands. For the first time ever, Kojiro can't rely on his usual tactics. Instead, he has to defeat someone. So he goes all out, lunging at Poseidon and using his signature move, a feinted first strike followed by a phantom second attack that slices off some of Poseidon's hair, amazing Mushi by mirroring the same blow Kojiro once used on him, which wounds Poseidon's pride and triggers his counterattack. Though Kojiro moves at an absurdly fast pace and dodges every strike, Brunhilde tells Gaul that, unlike Adam, Kojiro cannot see the attacks, but has instead studied Poseidon's every move since their first encounter, simulating the fight over 1,000 times in under 10 minutes to memorize every possible attack. Yet, despite the crowd's noise, Poseidon calmly whistles as he did before killing Adamas, then suddenly lunges and severely wounds, provoking Poseidon's rage and a brutal assault that shatters Kojiro's sword, making the crowd assume his defeat, until Kojiro reconstructs it using Christ's dual-natured second Valkyrie ability with twin swords. Then, furiously, after Kiro's flawless barrage of signature strikes leaves Poseidon battered all over, the crowd's wild excitement sends him into a rage. He twists his blood-soaked hair into a new style and unleashes a relentless storm of shifting attacks, choking Kojiro with blow after blow. Yet Kojiro still stands, convinced he can win and restoring humanity's hope as he, after repeatedly attacking Poseidon and countering his every move with flawless precision, as if performing a perfectly rehearsed dance, the humans defeat the seemingly invincible god of the seas, securing their first victory, which terrifies the gods, who now realize their most feared member has fallen, while both Thor and Zeus nearly lost, so they vow to fight with full strength next time. As the season end credits roll, Heimdall declares the next battle will shift to a new arena, rebuilt to the Human Representative Specifications, a 19th century London setting before introducing that representative. The most infamous serial killer in history, the enigmatic and terrifying Jack the Ripper, never seen in person, now faces Hercules, the mythical half-god and legendary hero chosen by the gods, in a long-awaited battle, while humans struggled to pick a side since all despise Jack for his crimes, but adore Hercules for his heroism. And even Arthur Conan Doyle watches from the stands as an irritated Hercules resents fighting such a ruthless, repugnant opponent who he believes doesn't. Hercules tells Jack that, unlike him, he doesn't want to fight because he's not a murderer, and he promises that if Jack surrenders, he will persuade Zeus to spare his soul, not because of his many crimes, but because he bravely represented humans in Ragnarok. Jack thanks Hercules for agreeing to fight in London and considering his plea for forgiveness, but politely refuses, then unveils his weapon, Valkyrie, a massive pair of scissors which stuns the silent stadium before excitement builds. Though Hercules is left bewildered when Jack flees, only to be found calmly drinking tea. Though furious, Jack Springs falls into a trap and strikes with hundreds of daggers, but no human-made weapon can harm the gods, so Jack escapes in a flashy display, only for Hercules to catch up, smash his scissors, and crush the hopes of the few humans who had faith in him, making it seem like the fight was over. Yet Jack suddenly hurls a volley of knives that slash Hercules repeatedly, stunning everyone. Jack admits he lied about his weapon being the scissors, prompting everyone to mock him as a fraud. But as he reveals his actual weapon, the bag that can forge deadly arms for the gods, the enraged Hercules counters with his first of the 12 labors technique, electrifying the crowd, while his muscles and tattoos swell, raising the gods' excitement as Ares tells Loki that Hercules has mastered both the 12 labors and 112 calamities, though using them risks his. Though Hercules, called Alides in his mortal youth, grew up weak on the streets of Thebes, he still aided the helpless, enduring bullying and mockery, all while driven by a resolve to become a hero. One day, bullies taunting him during training revealed the legend of Ambrosia, Zeus's blood, which granted godlike power to those with a heroic destiny, but killed all others who drank it. Later, after Alides grew into a mighty warrior respected by men, the gods decreed punishment for the city's wickedness, sending Ares to destroy it. But Alides stood between the war god and the people, earning Ares' acknowledgement of his courage before seizing the ambrosia in front of stunned onlookers and turning to battle Ares and his entire army. Zeus, stunned by the hero's strength, steps into their fight and later invites him to join the gods, on the condition that he never again harm humanity before adopting him as his son. Meanwhile, in the present, Jack shifts from defense to a fierce attack on Hercules, only to provoke him, using hidden threads to lift himself and hurl a barrage of knives, but Hercules counters with his 6th labor, forcing Jack down and breaking his assault. Jack's monocle shows his heterochromia and lets him see Hercules in an odd yet warm yellow hue, while the story, set in the past, follows his life growing up on London's harsh streets, where he scrambled for food and sensed the cruel hatred of those around him. Returning home, he finds his mother abused by a client as she sells herself to support him. And because of her love for him, he sees her bathed in that same warm yellow, which a co-worker of hers later explains to him. Anne had been pregnant 5 times before, but chose to keep only him, feeling sorry for Jack because, though kind and cultured, he was unlucky to be born under such circumstances. Yet he was thrilled just to live with his mother until he found her crying in his room. His father, the renowned playwright Jack Smith, had promised Mary he'd return for her and their son, but she later saw news of his success and new marriage, after which she began resenting Jack, treating him harshly and regretting his birth, making him realize the warmth she once had was gone. Driven not by love for his father but by love for him, Jack suddenly notices his mother's hatred descends into madness and kills her, only to fixate on the strange violet hue of her fear, a shade that consumes him and fuels his murderous spree, beginning with his father Jack Smith in the present later. To evade Hercules and stall for time, he climbs Big Ben. But Hercules topples the tower with a single strike, aided by the power of the 7th labor. Despite landing Jack in trouble, this was all part of the infamous assassin's scheme. He turned the clock's hands into a deadly weapon, stunning everyone when he used it to sever Hercules' arm, since he hadn't yet relied on the Valkyrie's supposed purse to forge that weapon, making even Hercules and many gods realize too late that Jack had outsmarted them again, just as a flashback of Brunhilde later shows Jack coercing Hawk. Wow! When the Valkyries merge their spirit with him and transform into his weapon, it turns out Jack's anti-god weapon is simply a pair of gloves that grant power to whatever they touch, making everyone in the stadium assume Hercules is doomed, since Jack could now wield the entire city of London against him. Yet Jack notices Hercules' color remains unchanged even in this overwhelming advantage. Darkest emotions, but still loves them unconditionally, which reminds Jack of his own mother. But this realization triggers Hercules' final divine labor, forcing him to prepare for a fatal last stand since the technique drains his life. Hercules then unleashes a frenzied, devastating assault on Jack, shredding everything in his way and stunning spectators with what may be his most brutal strikes yet. Though Jack evades many by using the terrain, a single hit still nearly kills him, while his mother would not. Jack fixates on turning Hercules red and, clutching his bleeding stomach with one hand and gripping a spear with the other, barely able to fight, charges at Hercules, only to deliberately miss, using his own blood as a weapon to fatally wound him. Brunhilde. To save them all, the stadium mourns, but none feel Jack's soul deep scars. Though the Olympian gods praise Jack's skill and cleverness, Ares angrily insists they honor Hercules, the unbroken hero, not Jack. Zeus then cuts in, warning that Ragnarok is now balanced and the third match will decide their fate. Later, Loki waits for Buddha to provocatively question him, accusing him of betrayal for aiding the Valkyries in giving their power to humans, the tension between them growing. Almost unbearable until other gods intervene. When they arrived and chose to back Loki, Buddha challenged everyone to a battle, until Kojiro showed up and sided with Buddha, followed by two other human fighters, Soji and Kondo. But just as the tension erupted into action and the sides began clashing, Zeus abruptly intervened, stopping the fight and declaring it unfit for that place, prompting Loki to storm off with a threat toward Buddha, after which everyone headed to the stadium for the next match while Brunhilde and G went to find the next human fighter. And upon reaching Gaul, he was stunned to discover Brunhilde had picked Tommymon. At first sight, Gaul is instantly intimidated by Brunhilde, who summons Thud, the Valkyrie destined to merge with him because of their shared physical traits, causing them to fall desperately in love and fuse into one seamless being until the fight begins and Raiden is dramatically introduced before the entire stadium, raising expectations just as Shiva, the god. The battle in the combat arena. Hiding begins fiercely as Raiden, who can create and destroy planets, takes the lead by slamming into Shiva with a flying kick, forcing Shiva to fight back seriously, then knocks him to his knees with a punch and nearly finishes him with one strike. But Shiva blocks it, making the fight gripping since both share striking similarities and immense raw power, which is expected from the god of destruction, but not from a human. Flashback later shows Raiden's parents dying from despair after seeing their over 3-year-old son still unable to walk, until one day they discovered him attempting. They soon realized the boy's muscles were unnaturally swelling, threatening to kill him after prolonged unbearable pain, until Raiden developed inner muscles that shielded him from his own body, a method later named the Hund seals to restrain his abnormal strength. Now, in the present, Brunhilde explains that Thruth won't provide a weapon like the other Valkyries, but will instead remove all of Raiden's seals, letting him fight at full power. After surviving this, Raiden unleashes a relentless barrage of strikes that leaves Shiva dazed from the sheer damage, yet Shiva blocks with a headbutt before Raiden smashes one of his arms using overwhelming force, revealing Thruth's ability to focus all his muscle power into a single limb to amplify strength, a display that excites Shiva by reminding him of a forgotten friend from thousands of years earlier, when the Indian gods vied to become the supreme deity, while two obscure gods, Rudra and his companion, lived quietly in a remote land, their clashing personalities overshadowed only by their unshakable bond. One was known as the Storm God, while Shiva was called the God of Destruction. One day, Rudra admitted he wanted to climb the mountain's peak, forcing Shiva to join him, though everyone mocked them for attempting what seemed impossible. Yet they pressed on toward Rudra's dream, defeating every opponent in their path, while honoring each defeated foe's wishes and dreams. After overcoming 115 gods and earning global admiration, they finally reached the summit, where Shiva celebrated wildly. But Rudra, knowing only one could stay, pleaded for a fight, and their brutal battle raged so fiercely that Rudra's sweat alone sparked storms across the land. After a grueling, endless battle where Shiva's strikes echoed everywhere, he nearly surrendered to avoid harming his best friend further. But Rudra sensed this, conceded defeat, thanked him for his help, and, to fulfill his dream, entrusted Shiva with all his aspirations before departing. After which Shiva was crowned king of the Indian gods. Returning to the present, Shiva then performs his war dance, gaining immense speed and using Raiden as a punching bag, forcing Raiden to tense every muscle. In his forearms to block, half of Raiden's face was set ablaze to trick humans into thinking the battle was over, while a flashback showed he had been shunned as a child for his overwhelming strength, leaving him heartbroken until his mother urged him to use it to shield the vulnerable. Years later, when his village plunged into deep poverty, he left for another city to earn money for his parents. He trained endlessly to become a top wrestler, but his fame grew far beyond what anyone imagined, so much that no one dared challenge him, leaving him without opponents. To fix this, he threw a match, earning praise from his master Raiden, who revealed he'd held back to honor his mother's lesson never to abuse his strength, so he sealed away his 4 signature techniques, yet still never lost a fight and retired undefeated. Now, in the present, as Raiden's friends eagerly watch, he finally unleashes his full muscle power, striking Shiva with such force that he shatters 2 of the gods' arms, leaving the other gods stunned until Zeus steps in to explain. Raiden's strike was so powerful that it shattered the sound barrier, and had Shiva not raised his guard, it would have destroyed him. But the effort tore and burst Raiden's muscles from the extreme strain, leaving him near collapse, so he ordered Thrud to stop restraining his body, wanting to fight all out for the first time, which might have finished Shiva if Rudra hadn't suddenly arrived in the stadium, reigniting Shiva's drive so fiercely that he clenched his chest to reignite his heart. With their hearts racing and bodies pushed to the absolute limit, just like Raiden's, both fighters know time is running out, so they pour every ounce of strength into each strike as the crowd roars at the incredible spectacle. But when their endurance hits the same breaking point, the next single blow will decide it all. After locking eyes and gathering their last surge of power, Shiva and Raiden prepare to end the battle. Raiden, his arms shattered and nothing left to give, thanks Thrud for her help, and spends his final breath begging her to break their bond and survive. But she refuses, having fallen in love with him. Raiden and Shiva exchange gratitude for the brutal, hard-fought battle and say their goodbyes, the gods claiming a 3rd victory to make the score 3-2 in their favor. Yet Shiva, utterly broken, admits to Zeus that humans are extraordinary. Zeus visits Buddha to request his help in the upcoming match, but does not specify which